So tonight we start with verse 8, chapter 9, verse 8. We have just finished chapters 4 through 8, which Ellen White speaks about as being very important chapters for us to study. In chapter 5 is the Ten Commandments, and so that area is very important. But of course, all the Bible is important. So we're going to move forward with verse 8 of chapter 9. It says, also in Horeb, now that's the same as Sinai, also in Horeb ye provoked the Lord to wrath, so that the Lord was angry with you to have destroyed you. Now this anger that often the Bible speaks about is not what we think of when we use the word angry. And I hear people, putting human construction on God because of those use of that term. But I'm sure you've heard the term righteous indignation. The difference between righteous indignation and the anger that humans have is that the anger that humans have is selfish in its orientation. We're angry because of what somebody did to us, and so, we get angry at somebody. That's not the way God is. His anger is unselfish. He's angry because he knows what he could do for us, and we're not letting him. And we're ruining ourselves, and it makes him angry to see us ruining ourselves, the ones that he created, the ones that he redeemed, and here we are destroying ourselves. Gets him angry. But it's righteous indignation. It's not, you didn't follow me, and, so I'm angry at you because you don't want to listen to me. It's totally different. So, in the book of Deuteronomy, this is a series of lectures that Moses gave during the last month of his life. And they were on the border of Canaan once again. After 40 years, they, wandered around, and now they're at the border again. But Moses can't lead them in because he struck the rock. So he now is recapping what is the most important of everything that God has done through him and given him. He's now giving this series of lectures over a 1-month period. So he's reminding them here about what happened at Mount Sinai. Verse 9. Well, before we go on to 9, in Exodus 32, verses 8 and 9, it also talks about this event that he's referring to. And it says, the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now maybe some of you have had a stiff neck, and you understand the symbolism that's used here. When you have a stiff neck, it's painful to turn your head, so you don't like to do it. Usually you turn your body instead because it hurts to turn your neck. And he's saying, I tried to get you to go this way, and I tried to get you to go that way, but you wouldn't go. You're stiff-necked. You went your own way. And the worst part about this, when people go their own way, is that other people watch them and they say, well, it's okay to do that because look what they're doing. If someone thinks rock music is okay, then pretty soon someone else, they see, well, they're using that in the church. It must be okay, or they wouldn't use it in the church, so I can listen, and they get hurt by listening to that kind of music. So God is really angry with righteous indignation because they are destroying each other by their disobedience and making other people think it's okay to do that. Verse 10 in Exodus, "Now therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, and that I may consume them, and I will make of thee a great nation." Now we know that Abraham was the father of the nation of Israel. But God is giving him an offer here. He said, "Moses, let me wipe these people out." Did he have to ask Moses for that? No, he could have wiped them out if he wanted to. But he had a reason for asking Moses, and we'll see why in a minute. And he said, "Moses, let's wipe out these people, and I'll start with you, and you'll be the new Abraham, and we'll have another chance at getting some righteous people." "Now therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, that I may consume them, and I will make of thee a great nation." So he's reminding the people about that event. Now, by the way, I have a syllabus. If you plan to come regularly and you want one, just let me know, and I have some more I could bring. Review and Herald of February 11, 1909. God declared that he would disown the people. So basically that's what he's saying. I'm gonna disown them. They're not following me anyway. I'm gonna disown them. He gave them their true character, a stiff-necked people who would not respect his law or come under his rule. Now, whenever I study, I like to apply it to today, because I never did like history all that much, and just to look at it historically doesn't have much excitement to me. But when you look at what it means for today, did you know that God revealed to Ellen White that Seventh-day Adventists have done worse than the Israelites? So the reason this is in here and the reason we should study it is because Seventh-day Adventists have been stiff-necked people. And God he's telling us in the Laodicean message, he's going to have to spit us out if we don't stop with that. If we don't quit being stiff-necked people, he's going to have to spit us out. A stiff-necked people who would not respect his law or come under his rule. "Let me alone," he said to Moses, "that my wrath may wax hot against them, and that I may consume them, and I will make of thee a great nation." Now, if you think about it carefully, God was testing Moses. He was saying, "Moses, if you've had enough of their rebellion, I'll release you. You don't have to keep on putting up with this. I'll release you from that." But Moses passed the test. He said, "No, Lord. No, let's work with these people." Of course, this was near the beginning of the 40 years. And he hopefully would have said the same at the end, but this was at the beginning. But he knew the disobedience and the unwillingness to do God's will already, just in that short time. In the first volume of Spirit of Prophecy, page 245, it says, "God saw that the children of Israel, especially the mixed multitude, were continually disposed to rebel, and by their works provoke him to destroy them." Now, I don't know whether you've examined this mixed multitude idea. But these were Egyptians that witnessed the miracles of God in Egypt, and they said, wow, you know, the God of Israel, that's the one that's got the power. Our gods don't have the power. And so when the Israelites were going out of Egypt, they said, can we go with you? And God allowed them to go with them. But every temptation that came to the Israelites seemed to start among the mixed multitude. Now, the Israelites were not supposed to listen to the mixed multitude. They were supposed to be the example to help the Egyptians fully join following the true God. That's the way it was supposed to be. But instead, the Israelites were listening to the mixed multitude and went along with them. Now, in the Adventist church, the mixed multitude is here too. Who are they? It's all the ones that join the Adventist church without being truly converted. They come in, maybe they come in because they really like Doug Batchelor. He's such a wonderful speaker. And so they come in. Or they read in their Bible and they say, you know, those Adventists are right. Those doctrines are exactly what the Bible teaches. And so they come in. But they don't have a conversion experience. Now, if those of us that are converted wouldn't listen to their suggestions about some of the things they want to do and practice, you know, maybe they would come the rest of the way. But often, even the people that are converted listen and go along with that. And so it will lead to a lack of conversion, actually, if they go that route and make things even worse. So, you know, the idea that if it's in the Adventist church, it's okay, we need to get rid of that. And we need to evaluate, is this according to God's Word or not? If it's not according to God's Word, even though people do it in the Adventist church, we can't go along with that. We need to stand up for what is right, and then God can use us to help some more people. They won't all, probably, but use some more people to want to do what is right as well. And one of the first things that has to change, it's the key to all of the changes, is in regard to our health, how we live. Whether we live healthfully or we don't. And if we live healthfully, then our brain gets clearer and we can see the error better. And don't worry about what other people eat, what habits they have of health. You follow what God said, and you will be able to be used by God to help others. Going on, this quote says, he proposed, he knew that they would murmur against Moses when in difficulty. You know, God read the future. He said, every time they get in trouble, they're going to complain about Moses and grieve him by their continual rebellion. He proposed to Moses to consume them and make of him a great nation. Here the Lord proved Moses. So this was a test for Moses. Be interesting to see if Moses had said, yes, Lord, let's wipe them out. But he was so much like Jesus, he said, no, let's not wipe them out. He knew that it was a laborious and soul-trying work to lead that rebellious people through to the promised land. He would test the perseverance, faithfulness, and love of Moses. So there's three characteristics Moses had because of his connection with Jesus. You know, that's the only way we have any of these good things, is through our connection with Jesus. And so he was so connected to Jesus, he was willing to persevere, he was willing to be faithful in his post of duty, and he was willing to love those people. He would test the perseverance, faithfulness, and love of Moses for such an erring and ungrateful people. But Moses would not consent to have Israel destroyed. He showed by his intercessions with God that he valued the prosperity of God's chosen people more highly than a great name. So Moses was truly humble. You know, it would have been Moses that was talked about instead of Abraham if he had taken God up on this. But he said, no, I don't need a great name. I just need to try to help these people. Or to be called the father of a greater nation than was Israel. So he turned down those honors. You know, so many people, if they can get honor, that's what they want to do. Immediately they want to go that way because they cherish that honor and so on. And often that's what leads us down the wrong path, because when you do the right, you don't get as much honor. Our son, one of our sons, Wayne, for a short period of his life was very interested in music, and he even put out a couple of CDs, and he was getting appointments to sing at churches. But he noticed that when he sang the good music, the audiences were small. So he ended up giving up the music field. I mean, he still sings some, but he gave it up because in general, if you want to be a popular singer, you have to change your music to what people like. And he didn't feel he could do that. And so, you know, that's where if he wanted honor, he would have changed his music. And I know some people, I won't give any names, but I know some people that changed their music. I had a real rough experience one time. There was a person that had given very good music, and it was folk style, but it was good music. And so I was asked, could they come to the church where I was and give a concert? I said, yes, I'd be glad to have you come. So they came, but the music was really different. And I was embarrassed because I knew the church was holding me responsible for this concert, and I was really embarrassed. But we, you know, toughed it out, and then some time went by, and I was asked to bring the person again. I said, I'm sorry, but you have changed your style of music. And it was just like I had slapped them in the face. And they were really upset with me because I wouldn't let them come and do their music. But, you know, that's the problem. And you're familiar in the Bible with pastors that do that. They're called pastors that are, the people have itching ears. And they want to hear smooth things said. They want to hear things that won't disturb them and won't step on their toes. And so pastors have a tendency to, if they want honor, if they want to be highly looked up to, they change things to meet what people want to get. But that was not Moses. He was not like that. He said it the way it was, and he would stand up himself for the way it was. Okay, going on to verse 9. Back in Deuteronomy, verse 9. When I was gone up into the mount to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant, which the Lord made with you, then I abode in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I neither did eat bread nor drink water. Wow. 40 days. no food, and no water. Well, let's look at this text a little bit. In the first volume of Spirit of Prophecy, page 242. I don't know how much all of you know about the Spirit of Prophecy. I know in our church it's not promoted that much. So we know about the Conflict of the Ages series, a 5-volume set that traces a great controversy from the Garden of Eden to the New Earth. But before that one was written, there was another series of 4 books, briefer, and that's called the Spirit of Prophecy. There's 4 volumes, and that was written specifically for Adventists. It's got some things in it that's straighter, because the 5-volume set was not written for Adventists, it was written for the public. It's okay if we read it, and it has more detail than the 4-volume set. But some of these from the 4-volume set are very helpful on some experiences. It says, even Moses could not go up at once into the mount, for he could not immediately approach so nigh unto God. Have you ever wondered why you couldn't suddenly get close to God? Well, Moses couldn't either. It takes time. You gotta work at it for a while. And endure the exhibitions of his glory. 6 days he was preparing to meet with God. So the Bible mentions the 40 days, but there were 6 days before that he had to prepare himself to be able to go into God's presence. His common thoughts and feelings must be put away. So for 6 days, whatever pertained to our regular life, he pushed that out, and he was thinking spiritual things and seeking to get close to God. By the way, that's the same way we can do it. Might not be able to do all day for 6 days unless you're on vacation, but if we do some extra every day, it will make a difference. During 6 days, he was devoting his thoughts to God and sanctifying himself by meditation and prayer before he could be prepared to converse with God. So he was being given a really high privilege to be able to actually talk to God up in that mountain for 40 days. So in preparation, he had 6 days when he studied his Bible, or, part of it was written, of course, and the part that was written he could study. By the way, prophets, just because they wrote it doesn't mean they understood it all. So we actually today have the privilege to understand more than what most of the prophets understood, because we have so much inspired writings, and as you go along, God unfolds more. And so we have a tremendous privilege. So Moses had to study, just like all the rest of the people. And he prayed, and he had to resist probably temptations. I don't know whether you struggle on Sabbath to not think about things of the week that kind of pop in your mind, and maybe you start thinking about it. Seems like a lot of people struggle with that, because when you visit on Sabbath, sometimes people want to stray off into a non-Sabbath subject. And so I know that it's a struggle. Well, Moses probably had that struggle too during those 6 days, but he kept bringing his mind back to the preparation that he was involved in. And he must have gotten ready, because he got to spend those 40 days. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 313. Upon the 7th day, which was the Sabbath, so Sunday through Friday, he was preparing, and on Sabbath, he started the 40 days. On the seventh day, which was the Sabbath, Moses was called up into the cloud. The thick cloud opened in the sight of all Israel, and the glory of the Lord broke forth like devouring fire. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and gat him up into the mount. And Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. The 40 days tarry in the mount did not include the 6 days of preparation. Now, I've had to deal with people who claim there are discrepancies between the Bible and Ellen White. And this would be the kind of thing they'd jump on. They'd say, the Bible doesn't say he spent 6 days. So here's a conflict. She's a false prophet because the Bible doesn't say that. That's not the issue. As the prophets unfolded throughout the Bible, they often said things that weren't in the earlier prophets. Does that mean we reject a later prophet because he said something the first one didn't say? No, we don't. If it were to conflict, in other words, it's opposite, then we have to declare them a false prophet. But the 6 days in no way damages the biblical record. It's just additional information that was not revealed to the earlier prophets. That's all. During the 6 days, Joshua was with Moses. So he was going to be the next leader. He didn't know it yet. But he was going to be the next leader. And so God had him also, during those 6 days, clearing his heart, getting close to God. And together they ate of the manna and drank of the brook that descended out of the mount. But Joshua did not enter with Moses into the cloud. So Joshua got a lot of blessing, but he didn't get to go in the actual cloud along with Moses. But Joshua did not enter with Moses into the cloud. He remained without and continued to eat and drink daily while awaiting the return of Moses. But Moses fasted during the entire 40 days. So he didn't eat any manna, didn't even drink any water apparently during this time. Well, I don't know about the water. It doesn't say. It says he fasted anyway during the 40 days. Also in the Fifth Bible Commentary, page 1079, in the wilderness of temptation, Christ was without food 40 days. So Moses became a type of Christ, that he went without food 40 days. But he wasn't fully like Christ, because notice, Moses had, on special occasions, been thus long without food. But he felt not the pangs of hunger. So God miraculously sustained Moses for 40 days, and he never even felt hungry. But that was not true of Jesus when he came for his 40-day fast. He was not tempted and harassed by a vile and powerful foe, as was the Son of God. So here's another difference. Moses was shut in with God's glory, but Jesus had Satan after him for 40 days. We sometimes get the wrong idea that he only got tempted at the end of the 40 days, but that's not true. Satan was after him the entire time. But we learn about the 3 temptations that he had at the end, when he was the weakest of the whole period. He, meaning Jesus, was he meaning Moses, was elevated above the human. He was especially sustained by the glory of God, which enshrouded him. As far as I know, no other human being ever had what Moses had. God is not a God of favoritism, but it's because of the faithfulness of Moses and because of how much of Christ's character he accepted that he was given this amazing privilege and opportunity. First selected messages, 272. When Christ bore the test of temptation upon the point of appetite, he did not stand in beautiful Eden as did Adam, with the light and love of God seen in everything his eyes rested upon. But he was in a barren, desolate wilderness, surrounded with wild beasts. Everything around him was repulsive, and from which human nature would be inclined to shrink. With these surroundings, he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. And in those days, he did eat nothing. That's Luke 4, verse 2. He was emaciated through long fasting and felt the keenest sense of hunger. His visage was indeed marred more than the sons of men. So I discovered in one of my studies that the Apostle John, who was the one that always wanted to be the closest to Jesus, he actually succeeded in finding Jesus out there in the wilderness. And Jesus said, no, you can't be here, you got to leave. But he was really surprised at how terrible Jesus looked due to this long fast and the constant harassment of the devil. Now, this is not the key point here, but I think it's worthy of thinking about. You know, why is it that we struggle so much with appetite? Our struggle is not trying to go 40 days without eating. That's not our struggle. Our struggle is to eat moderately some things that are not good for us to eat too much of, and to refrain from eating things that are harmful to us. That's our struggle. Jesus knew how difficult the struggle with appetite is, and so that's why he took 40 days to totally conquer that temptation. He wasn't just resisting bad things. He was resisting all food during that 40 days. And if he hadn't been strengthened at the end by his Father, he probably wouldn't have lived. If we think about that, I think it'll ease our struggle with appetite. You know, if we think about that from time to time. Okay, going back to our chapter, we won't finish this verse, but we'll get started. Verse 10, chapter 9 of Deuteronomy, verse 10. And the Lord delivered unto me 2 tables of stone, written with the finger of God. And on them was written according to all the words which the Lord spake with you in the mount, out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. Now the background to this is that Moses, well, first God spoke it to all the people, and then he wrote it on tables of stone with his own finger. Now what many don't realize is that elevates the 10 Commandments above the entire rest of the Bible. Because all the rest of the Bible, except a few words, from heaven that were copied. Everything else in the Bible was given to a human instrument to write down. But the Ten Commandments are so important that God did not trust even a prophet to write it down. He wrote it with his own finger. And for people to think that they have the right to change God's law shows that they don't understand that fact. And, the Catholic Church believes that you only need to keep 8 commandments. And the Protestants believe that you only need to keep 9 commandments. But that shows they don't understand why God would write the 10 Commandments with his own finger and deliver it to Moses to bring down and keep. In the Patriarchs and Prophets, page 503, it says, "He has condescended to speak to them with his own voice." So there's another matter. He spoke it with his own voice. Second, to write with his own hand the living oracles. And these blessed words, all instinct with life and luminous with truth, are committed to men as a perfect guide. Now, there is a concept there that often isn't seen either. Many look at the 10 Commandments as a list of don'ts. Don't do this, don't do that. And, if you do this, you'll be in trouble. No. What God is saying in the 10 Commandments is if you want to have the happy life, if you want to live in heaven where everybody else keeps this law so that you won't feel out of place up there, then you want to keep this law and you're going to be happy and you're going to be better off. And so God wants, the truly converted people to give that message to all the rest that this is not something that, I wish I didn't have to do this. But this is something we're praising God that we can do. And we do it, of course, through his power. We can't do it on our own. Because Satan is so ready to catch away the mind and divert the affections from the Lord's promises and requirements, the greater diligence is needed to fix them in the mind and impress them upon the heart. So God knew who he was dealing with, how easy they could forget, and so he told them, but then he wrote it on tables of stone, as well as having it in the Bible where we can all read it. He knows that we forget easy and that we might get confused by what others are doing or what they're saying to us. And so we have to just constantly be checking that out. How are we doing in this? In Lift Him Up, page 137, and I guess we'll stop with this one. It says, "At Sinai, the law was spoken, and a copy of it on 2 tables of stone, written with the finger of God, was delivered to Moses." So God told him a lot of things to write down, but this one thing he delivered to Moses. He didn't tell him and say, "Moses, you go down and write it out." But he gave it to him so that there didn't have to be any doubt about this. Now there's quite a few other interesting facts, but we'll have to finish that up next week.